Thanks very much to Eugene, to the staff, and most importantly, frankly, and this is no disrespect to Max, but thanks to each of you, because you can take an idea, but my wife, who was for more than 30 years a public school teacher, said to me many times, you know, Joe, the problem with good ideas is that they inevitably degenerate into hard work. And you all know exactly what I mean, because you are doing it day to day, week to week, month to month. And I won't even go through all the details of what it is that you do, but you know what I'm talking about. The problem with good ideas is that they inevitably degenerate into hard work. Now, I am a fan of theories, and I have enormous respect for Ted Kolderie and the ideas that he's presented, and the ideas that he has not only presented but worked to send throughout the United States. I've learned an enormous amount from him. Many people have. But I also think it's important to understand how things actually take place and get done. So this is going to be a little louder. You all have been very patient over the last hour or so. I'm going to ask you a few questions, starting with this one. How many of you believe in opportunity? You believe in opportunity? Is that a yes?
Yes.
Do you believe in justice?
Yes.
Do you believe that educators ought to have the opportunity to create the kinds of schools that they think make sense within certain limits?
Yes.
Well, folks, Eugene asked me to say a little bit about what were we up to. And frankly, that's what we were up to. We were up to trying to promote equity, we were trying to promote opportunity, we were trying to promote greater justice, and we were trying to promote new opportunities for educators. And that has happened. We started with one school, 10 minutes from this room. One school with 50 kids, give or take. That was a school, by the way, that a leading civil rights organization in this town opposed. It's incidentally the same civil rights organization that last year proposed no more charters. The same organization in this town proposed not allowing this school to start. Some things, unfortunately, don't change. However, on your table is an article about Rosa Parks. You know that Rosa Parks. Have you ever heard of Rosa Parks?
Yes.
Okay, well, Rosa Parks spent the last 5 years of her sainted life trying to start a charter public school in Detroit, Michigan. That's something that Diane Ravitch and a whole lot of other people don't want to talk about, don't want to think about, don't want to hear about. But it wasn't just Rosa Parks, and that article is on your table. Let's go back to 1968. That was before Time for Results, the National Governors Association. On your table is an article by Kenneth Clark. Who's Kenneth Clark? Well, Kenneth Clark is the African-American child psychologist who, with his wife, came up with what's called the doll test that was used in the U.S. Supreme Court case Brown versus Board. And Kenneth Clark did this research that was used in Brown versus Board, but he was so frustrated between the period 1954 and 1968 that he wrote an article based on a speech he gave the year before saying it is time for new public schools. 1968. And if you read on the second page of that I've put it into this packet, which is not the full article, but I encourage you, not right now, but I encourage you to read the second paragraph on page 111 in which he talks about how we need new public schools outside the control of local districts. Does that sound familiar? Outside the control of local districts. I read that when I was in college. I was inspired by it. New public schools outside the control of charters. Eugene briefly mentioned a book, 1983, long before Al Shanker said a word about all this, called Free to Teach. And I was a public school teacher here in St. Paul, and I discovered how the district would not leave us alone. A group of mothers, yes, I mean mothers, convinced the district to create a K-12 public option in the fall of 1971. And over the next 15 years, there were 11 different principals. That's PAL, principals, because the district wouldn't leave us alone. There's a lot more in this, but the book happened through a strange series of circumstances to come to the attention of Lamar Alexander, then governor of Tennessee. And he hired me to coordinate a project for the National Governors Association that resulted in a report that looks like this called Time for Results. And in the report, which came out in 1985, long before Al Shanker said a word, no disrespect to Al Shanker, but long before Al Shanker said a word, the governor of Tennessee, working with the governor of Arkansas, a man named Bill Clinton, said it is time for a new bargain in public education. We, the governors, are willing to regulate less if you, educators, are willing to be more responsible for results. 1985. And so one of the reasons that people listen to TED and people listen to Ember and people listen to others is that both Lamar Alexander, a Republican, and Bill Clinton, a Democrat, have been very interested in the idea of this switch, this new way of doing things, and very interested in the possibility that there ought to be new options in public education if people were willing to be responsible for results. And those are some of the central principles. So, being respectful of your time and your patience, let me just say 4 quick things about what it is we were trying to do. You said that you were interested in opportunity, right? You said you're interested in justice, right? So I'm going to ask you to please read the article by Rosa Parks. It's nice to be on the same side as Rosa Parks, don't you think? It's nice to be on the same side as Kenneth Clark, right? Please read at least the first 2 pages, because you're going to see some very interesting things that he proposes in 1968. Creation of new public schools outside the control of districts. And that is the whole, as Ted said very eloquently, chartering is not just the creation of new public schools, it is the creation of a new force in public education that districts have to take into account. And so, for example, just a few minutes from this room is a Montessori middle school on the east side of St. Paul, a district program that was the result of 10 years of battling by elementary school parents and teachers in this town, which was ignored by the district. And so a group of parents and educators created a Montessori middle school. And guess what? Within a year and a half, the district had one. But it isn't just in St. Paul. In Forest Lake, there was the creation of a new elementary school when parents said, well, if you won't let us do this Montessori school here as part of the district, then we'll create a Montessori. And the district said, no, we don't want you to do that. We have people here from Rochester, right? Rochester. And in Rochester, a group of parents said, we want a different kind of school. The school board said no. Then the parents said, well, we'll create a new charter. And the board said, well, let's talk. And so they created a new option. Chartering is not just about the creation of the individual schools. It is also about the creation of a new force for families, for justice, for opportunity, for students, for families, and educators. Now, I debated with myself about starting to name names. And I've decided not to name names because I am so full of gratitude and admiration for many, many people in this room who have taught me a great deal. But I have heard from a number of you, this is one of the hardest things you've ever done. Is that a fair statement? To create charters is one of the hardest things you've ever done? Yes? And you're so tired you can barely say it. So we were interested in the creation of new public schools as expansion of opportunity, as expansion of justice, but also opportunities for educators. And so what does all this mean to you? I mean, it's interesting. This guy is yelling and screaming and asking me to say yes. I would ask you to do 3 things, to consider doing 3 things. First of all, take care of yourselves. Some of you know I had a heart attack a couple of years ago. You can't imagine why. I mean, I'm so calm. But please, find time to take care of yourself. If you are involved in this movement, which you are, this is an ultra marathon. It is something that is going to require strength and courage and support. So please take care of yourself. That's number one. Please ask yourself, if you are not regularly exercising, what am I doing in 30 minutes a day that is more important than making sure that I live a long and healthy life? You can't guarantee it, but you can dramatically increase life. So that's my first request. Please take care of yourself, and please give yourself credit for the enormously important work that you're doing. Secondly, please consider asking legislators to come see your school sometime in the next month or two, because many of them have no clue about what's happening, but they are being told. In fact, as Eugene pointed out the other day, one of the candidates for governor has told Education Minnesota that he will do everything possible, direct quote, to protect public schools, by which he means district schools, from charter schools. Everything possible. The legislators and the people running for office need to see what's actually happening in your schools, and to be reminded, by the way, that they are public schools. We'll have a national webinar, an hour free webinar on October 10th to talk about this. Information is coming out about it. If you're interested, just let me know. Gene has already started publicizing it, which I appreciate. Please consider, number two, please consider inviting legislators and people running for office to come to see what's happening in your schools and get the kids involved. We have many, many times won battles, spearheaded by Eugene and his colleagues, but with the support and the deep involvement of families and students from your schools, because people are so satisfied. And I will tell one short story, one more point. When we were fighting for lease aid a number of years ago, the legislature was poised to dramatically reduce the amount of lease aid. And we called a press conference, we started, and John Schrader, who worked with Senator Durenberger, who is one of the people I will say something about, because John was at the center, yes. John was the staff person on Senator Durenberger's staff, who was a huge supporter of chartering, who mentioned it to Durenberger, got him interested, and if there's one person in the United States who is responsible for lease aid, it's that man right there. I'm sorry, for startup funds. For startup funds. If there's one man in the United States, that's the man right there. Because he got Durenberger, and then Durenberger got Kennedy, and we were off to the races. So please consider getting legislators to come and see what you're doing. The final thing is, please give yourselves credit for the enormously important, critical, courageous work that you are doing. I have told the story, and if some of you heard it, I apologize. But many years ago, in the Southern Civil Rights Movement, of which I was proud to be a tiny little part, a reporter from the New York Times went up to a woman who had been deeply involved in the Montgomery bus boycott and said, "Why did you do this?" She said, "Well, you know, we were being treated badly." And she said, "Yeah, but it was so much work. You were threatened. People were trying to kill you. You know." She said, "Well, I really thought it was important to do." And he said, "But isn't there some deeper reason?" The woman looked at the reporter and she said, "Well, I'll tell you. My feet are tired, but my soul is rested. And you are in this room and you are doing the work that you are doing because you are willing to exchange tired feet for a rested soul. And I salute you and thank you."